We're good. Good. Okay. There are 6 members present. Therefore, 5 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. Opening the meeting of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. The Board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Inglewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this Board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such appeal must be made within 30 days of the Board's decision. The variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance's effective date. We'll open a public hearing for each case. Staff will give an overview. Applicant will have a chance to give us any additional information. Anyone present can speak for or against. Then we'll follow up with staff, close the meeting, the public meeting, and we'll discuss and vote. Will you please take roll?
Present.
Present.
Here. Present.
Here.
Present. We'll open the public hearing for cases VAR 2016-009 and VAR 2016-010. We have proof of posting and publication, and I'll share that. You have an overview for us?
Audra Kirk. Good evening. Before you tonight is, as stated earlier, variance request VAR 2016-009 and VAR 2016-010. The variance that is being requested tonight is to reduce the ground floor commercial space from 50.1 to 0%. It is to develop 15 townhomes. However, the townhomes are not at all in consideration for a variance right now. When they are developed, they'll meet all requirements, setbacks, parking, landscaping. They'll meet all that. This variance is strictly for the reduction of commercial space from 50.1 to 0%. This is located at 3595 and 3575 South Cherokee. The following slides here are basically an indication. The next 2 are ILCs, which are improvement location certificates of what's existing there now. Right now there's 2 single-family homes. And the next few slides are variations of concepts of the 15 units. But again, those are not up for discussion tonight. It's strictly the commercial space. So does anybody have any questions for me?
You guys maybe talked about this last month and I missed it because it was a variance to a similar provision. But the 1661 for provisions, I know we've dealt with this before, but it reads a little awkwardly. But the city, I'm just confirming that the city's interpretation is basically you can't have multifamily residential without having some commercial on the ground floor.
Right. Basically it states that you can't have standalone residential. It has to incorporate ground floor commercial space.
It could be written better.
I agree. A lot of the code could. No more questions?
I think we probably do. Fine. Does anyone have any other questions for staff at this point? We will have another chance. Okay, thank you, Ms. Kirk. Will the applicant please come forward?
Yes, I do. Adam Berger. I'm located at 171 South Arlington Street in Denver.
So, anything you can add to, I mean, we've received your letter and we've seen your justifications. Obviously, we have to rule on these based on the 4 criteria that, you know, you've been made aware of. Do you have anything to add? Is there anything
I would say,
compelling?
sure. I'd say several things. I've spent the last 2.5, 3 years investing in the Englewood market, in particular, this area on either side of Broadway. And I think this particular location is ideally suited for residential. I think there's a great opportunity here to build residential product that is more affordable, which I think is in great demand in this market. And I'm sort of going long on Englewood. I really think it's a great neighborhood, great community. We've owned property for 2.5 years in Englewood, and I'm invested in this neighborhood. With respect to this particular location, aside from sort of the greater macro aspects of the market in terms of demand for what I'm characterizing as more affordable, which is I think below the new home sale median for the state, which is over $500,000. I think this type of product in this location would be below that, and which I think is important. But as it pertains to the 50.1% commercial requirement on the ground floor, I mean, I think the MU1B1 zoning is important for the retail corridors of Hampton and Broadway, as those corridors are redeveloped, and certainly you want to maintain the commercial component within those corridors. If you're going to redevelop them and include residential, it's important to have the commercial with any residential. I think in this particular location, you're off the corridor. You're not really within the corridor. And for whatever reason, you have this sort of figure of MUB1 stretching down Cherokee, and there is some commercial right off of Hampton, which I think makes sense. But as you continue down the block, and certainly across from the park, you're really out of the sight lines and the type of vehicle trip, the traffic and visibility that's required to make a commercial use successful. So, for whatever reason, MUB1 was placed there. I think it's terrific zoning for mixed use, but I think in this particular location, supporting commercial is, I think, uneconomical, just given how far it is off of Hampton.
And what is your reason for not wanting to do retail there? I mean, obviously the code is set up because the encouragement of in that zone, they want the retail at the street level.
Well, I don't think it's a retail location. And so when you look at the criteria, I mean, the first criterion, physical conditions of its, the sort of paramount, ultimate point is the location, the surroundings. I mean, it is surrounded on all sides by residential. It's across the street from a park that's for residents, and it has no visibility on Hampton. So I think with respect to the first criterion, I think the location is sort of paramount importance. I think it is consistent with the overall zone district relative to generating more new residential product that's more affordable in the market. You're generating patrons that will use the retail amenities that are up the block and on Hampton and across in north of Hampton. I think that's important to bring in some level of density that creates more affordability, but also patronizes the retail amenities that are within the retail corridor. So I think there's real consistency there relative to the second criterion. In terms of the third criterion, it's in directly corresponds with the abutting properties with respect to being residential. So it's completely consistent with what's directly adjacent to it if those are ever redeveloped.
You mean like directly across the street?
Directly across the street is...
Because those look pretty recent.
Those were built, redeveloped about 10 years ago.
Okay.
There's a gentleman here who resides in maybe less than 10 years, who resides in one of the units. And then in terms of the fourth criterion, it's not a self-imposed hardship. I think it's really something that is by dint of its location doesn't support commercial. But
There's for sale signs up, right? Is this a contingent on you getting?
I have it under contract.
I see.
One of the property owners are here. They're the owners of 3575 South Cherokee. So their sign is still up. I think it says on the contract.
And what is the difference between the two options? It looks like one's 15 or one's 18 units.
Well, those were early iterations of site planning exercises that we've embarked on as we're studying the site and determining and the market, determine what's the best site plan and type of product and size of product that's suited for that location.
Have you made a decision?
We haven't yet. We're still working on it. We subsequently are working on plans that have fewer, larger units. So we're trying to while we think that there's an opportunity to develop product here that's maybe slightly smaller and more affordable, we also want to strike a balance between going too far and making it too small, and also accommodating the buyers that are looking in this market, which are typically looking at larger units that are over 2,000 square feet. So we have begun to study 10 to 12 units that are larger. Instead of having 3 rows, which you see in your package, there's 2 with the central drive aisle. And those units have, as opposed to the ones before you, which don't have any living space on the ground floor, the units the plan that we're studying now has living space on the ground floor. It would include a bedroom. So these larger units would likely be 3-bedroom units as opposed that would support families, children, as opposed to, not to say that a family would buy a 2-bedroom unit, which is more or less the design for you would be a 2-bedroom unit. I just think there's greater flexibility if they're larger. So that's what we're studying right now. Long way of answering your question that we haven't quite made a decision yet, but we're studying it quite seriously.
Of the options you're considering, are there any other reasons for variance that you know of yet?
Well, no, we don't have any. Our plans accommodate all of the zones.
So it's just the retail aspect.
Correct.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of this?
Sharon Leonard at 3550 South Delaware Street, Inglewood. And my building is on the other side of the alley from the two residences. And my feeling is that any kind of business on that particular corner is going to cause so much more traffic in that alleyway. And the alleyway is not paved. And so you have Discount Tire on the corner there on Hampton and Cherokee. And then you have the liquor store. And, of course, they have a lot of traffic. And my feeling is that it would be much better to have a solely residential area. And I'm told that they may have their own garages. I don't know if that's true. So that would be very helpful because that'll eliminate the problem with parking. And you're really not in an area where you're going to get any traffic going by other than on foot if it were a business. Because most people, there's the townhomes across the street on the other side of Cherokee, and there's residential on our side, and then there's the park. So it really seems to me that it's more of a residential area. So I'm in complete agreement with doing away with the business portion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Want me to answer any other questions?
I have a quick question. So you live at 3550?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else wish to speak in favor?
My name is Kevin Floyd. I live at 3568 South Cherokee. Townhome's directly across the property here. My wife and I moved in last May and liked the neighborhood, liked the fact that it was so close to everything. I mean, we're a block off Hampton. We can walk to Walmart, the grocery store, everything. So we decided to actually purchase the property in November. We own it now. We don't want business right across the street from us. It's a residential neighborhood. There's houses right to the north of that as well. There's some business further north between Hampton and our property in the townhomes, but it's converted housing anyway. It's not like a huge retail area or anything. It just doesn't make sense in that particular location, like everybody else has said. It's a residential area. There's a park. Businesses is a block away. That would be fine. I think if it was, 7 floors and had 200 units, sure, there's need for retail on the ground units to support that. There'd be residences to support some kind of retail on the ground floor. There is nobody to support that. Well-designed location. You'd be a hard time finding tenants to want to rent the retail space down the street, as well as being able to succeed as a business. I urge you to pass the next.
Thank you. Any questions for? Thank you. Anyone else present wish to speak in favor? Please come forward.
My thing is,
Just speak into the microphone, yeah. Thanks.
next door to us, you have a residential house that will be staying, and then next to them is a apartment building, okay? And so you've got residential next to it. No one with dogs and stuff like that really wants a business right next to them in housing like that. And with all the business across the street, off Hampton with Walmart and all the food businesses and Big Lots and everything, I don't see the necessity on making that is really residential, than a business there, because they just don't want to live next to a business. It brings in people that you might not want. That's
So you live at one of the houses that will be?
Yeah, I live in the house. I'm just thinking of the house next to us. They didn't want to sell, okay, and they rented, and I don't think they're going to want a business next to them. You have dogs in that yard and stuff that bark and different things. I just don't think they're going to want a business right next door to them. And then on the other side of them is an apartment building, which is residential. That's it.
Thank you. Does anyone else present wish to speak in favor of this? Anyone present wish to speak in opposition? Do you have anything else for us on it?
I would just like to say that based on this aerial, it does give a pretty good perception of how it is such a residential neighborhood, and staff does believe that this variance should pass based on the fact that this would be a very hard location for retail to succeed.
Who was that?
Staff.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Thank you.
Might have one, I don't know if you can answer it or not. Why is that whole little niche designated this zoning anyway, as opposed to the park side or anything further south?
Why is it zoned business?
Yeah.
You know, I wish I could answer that. I can't. It was zoned this way many years ago, and I don't have any idea how it became that way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move that case VAR 2016-009, 3575 South Cherokee Street be granted a variance to reduce the required ground floor commercial space from the required 50.1% to 0% to develop 15 townhomes. And I'll also move that case VAR 2016-10 at 3595 South Cherokee Street be granted a variance to reduce the required ground floor commercial space from the required 50.1% to 0% to develop the 15 townhomes.
I have a quick question. So in here we have 15 townhomes, but we don't know.
That's, yeah. So should that not be?
Should we
in
strike the
motion?
15?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe.
So I'll move to amend
Should we
my
keep it
motion.
contingent on developing at least a certain number of townhomes? Should we completely eliminate the retail regardless of what happens there?
Yes, you would make a motion to approve the variance to eliminate the 50.1% retail component. And that's all you need, yes, and that's all you need to do.
Not contingent on.
Not contingent on.
Well, I mean, we're able to, right? We're
You
able-
are, but it doesn't make sense to do it that way. I would simply make the motion to
Just
approve
end
the
it at 0%.
variance and remove the 50.1% requirement.
All right, so maybe restate those then.
All right. So I'll make a revised motion, an amended motion, that case VAR 2016-009 at 3575 South Cherokee Street be granted a variance to reduce the required ground floor commercial space from the required 50.1% to 0%. And that case VAR 2016-10 at 3595 South Cherokee Street be granted a variance to reduce the required ground floor commercial space from the required 50.1% to 0%.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion on our criteria. I mean, obviously, we've seen, 3 of these now?
Right, to me, this one makes the most sense.
Right.
I know that,
Because it's in this alcove that's all,
and the area around there is residential. I've been in that area. It's, I think that it makes the most sense, especially if it's developed properly, which I'm hoping it will be, to have some bigger units and take advantage of the park, that maybe the bigger units could have kids that could enjoy the park. But to me, it just has definitely the residential feel. And it's so far away from Hampton, the lot is not right next to, say, Hampton or a Broadway or something like that. I think that's what the variance is for.
yeah, so I think for those reasons, it meets first criterion fine and the intent. Second, yeah, see first, second, third.
I think it conforms to the
Seems
neighborhood.
Meet them all.
I think it meets them all.
Any other discussion?
I guess my only question has to do with this whole area. I mean, anything in this little piece that's being, south of the ones that actually border on Hampton. I mean, it's just miszoned as far as I'm concerned. Anybody in that section would have the same argument as these people do. So if we feel okay about sort of blanket making that happen on here as a variance as opposed to a rezoning, then I'm all in favor of, I agree with everything that's being said and why it needs to be done.
Right. And I agree with you. I think that there's a zoning issue, but just like the one that we previously had, I think these lots are right at the corner. And before we carved out because the lot was right at the corner. And to me, this one makes more sense because, again, it's in the residential area. And again, I would employ, the powers that be at the city to even look at this so we don't keep addressing it.
Agreed. Any other?
Thirded. Yeah. And I think it's the Christian Science Reading Room building replacement that's more in the core of downtown, solve this issue by having live-work dwellings, and that's more of a core downtown area, and that seems like a way to solve it there. I see this as a much different area than that.
Yeah, I think especially with all the commercial development across on the other side of Hampton.
All right, let's vote.
Mr. Friesen, how do you vote?
I vote yes. I think the first criterion is met just by the uniqueness of location within the city here and the surrounding areas, so that criteria is met. It is unique. Second criteria about is it consistent with the intent of the zone district? I believe so. Certainly everything around that was with this intent. So, and I think maybe that's enough.
Schmitz?
I voted yes for the reasons stated for criteria 1 and 2, and further for 3. Will not permanently impair the use or development of adjacent conforming properties or alter the essential character of the neighborhood, which is sort of this borderland of residential next to commercial on Hamden. And it's not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship.
Mr. Finn?
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Mr. Mott?
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Ms. Purdy?
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Chair Green?
I voted yes for the reasons stated by Mr. Friesen and Ms. Schmitz.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing for case VAR 2016-011.
Do you swear or affirm of the penalties of perjury that you will
I do. I'm going to pass out, there was a requirement from the applicant that was not included in the packet. So we apologize for that, but I am going to pass it out right now. And basically what it is an updated justification.
Ms. Kirk, how did you draw the short straw to present this for Jeremy?
You don't want to know. But before you tonight is case number VAR 2016-011. It's for 2880 South Corona Street. The applicant is requesting a variance to exceed the maximum permitted square foot allowance of 1,000 feet for a garage by an additional 84 square feet. This is just an aerial view where you can see that they actually have a side-loading alley, which is really unusual in the city of Inglewood. Most alleys are located north to south. The neighbor notifications, he did get and supply 5 neighbor notifications, actually 6. The 5 neighbor notifications on Bates Parkway are all owners. I was told today that the 2865, well, the one directly behind him, they did sign the neighbor notification, but they are a renter. So, does anybody have any questions for me right now?
I have a couple.
Of course.
Briefly, and I will try to keep this brief. And I think it was misstated in staff's report that the intent of the zone, I'm sorry, yeah, if you want that, it's number 2 under the second criteria, that the intent of the zone district is to have an accessory structure that's no more than 1,000 square feet on a typical lot. I think that's for a garage only, because then you can also have, can't you, a storage shed that's 150 and then another accessory structure that's 200? Right.
That maybe should have said to have a detached garage.
Okay. And then also that I think, to me, the point there was he was trying to get at is this is, even if the garage is added, it's still under the max lot coverage.
Right.
This lot.
Right. And Jeremy did briefly go over this with me this afternoon, so I don't know everything exactly, but I think I got most of it. And basically what I was told is that there really isn't any other place to put this garage. Oh, what did I do? Oh, never mind, sorry. There isn't really any other place to put this big garage without, apparently there's a large tree here, and without really, if you're going to side load off the alley, without having a large driveway going all the way through your backyard and taking down that tree.
It's not totally clear to me. So the existing garage stays.
Yes.
And this is a new 1,000-foot garage. Or
No.
84 square foot.
It's
garage.
an addition to the existing garage, and the addition.
So the total square footage of both becomes
Yes.
1,084.
Right. And I think that it's noted, which is an interesting point in staff's report, that additionally, originally what they wanted to do was attach the structure to have all one structure, which then the existing garage could be turned into a studio of sorts, and then you would have an attached garage. But if you do that, because the house is set back so far, there's a 20-foot setback in back of the lot, and then they would bust that. So I think that's how we got here, if that makes sense. Because once you have the principal structure, then you have a 20-foot setback in the back of the lot. With a detached garage, you don't have that 20-foot setback.
Correct.
So it will be detached,
Yes.
but the other one is still considered garage?
The other one is, and you probably could answer this better than I could. The other one's still going to be used as a garage, yes.
And the 1,084 square feet is both of them, or just the new
No,
separate
it's
one?
both of them combined.
Okay. Well, hold on a sec, because we'll have you come in and be sworn in a sec.
Missed up.
All right. So any other questions for staff at this point?
So if it were attached, the setback would be the issue, but that would be the only issue?
Yes.
If, thank you. We might have more questions for you after.
Okay.
Thank you. Will the applicant please come forward?
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony is appropriate and is perceived as an investment.
Yes.
State your name and address.
Eric Altman, 2880 South Corona.
So in the picture, it looks like they're touching the old garage and the new garage, but they're not?
They are.
Okay.
They are touching.
There's a covered patio.
There's a covered patio, but we're building off of, let me get the orientation right here. To the bottom is the new structure, and that is being attached to the existing garage that's there, making for the total of the 1084.
So the 1084 is the square footage of both the old garage and the new garage?
Correct.
And why the extra 84? Why is that necessary?
Why, I'm sorry?
Why the extra 84?
Well, we're newlyweds, and we're now up to 5 kids, and we've got a couple out of 10, a lot of family, and we need all the storage space we can get. And if we're going to go through this, we want to get as much as we can. We have the setback issue if we were to connect. We also have one on the sides of the alley. We can't go.
There's a laser pointer, I think, up there, if that might
Oh,
help you.
right, okay. Yes, our setback here that's legal. But if we connect here somehow, then this becomes part of the house, and we have to have 1 more foot. I believe it's 7 foot instead of 6 feet. So we're kind of, maybe we could come before you folks and get that adjusted, but that would require a variance as well.
And there's an easement?
Yes, here, this line, 7.5 feet either side, our neighbor's house. And by the way, one quick note, the neighbor it was the renter who signed without objection. I was on the phone with the owner of the house, and she wasn't able, we couldn't get the paper to her in time and everything, and so she called her tenant and said, yeah, okay, I'm fine with that, which we did note that it was the tenant signing for the owner.
Thank you.
So the existing garage is going to be turned into more of a studio recreation space.
Right, exactly.
And it won't be used as a garage anymore.
No. The way it's set up, it's almost a 2-car, but it's got a 1-car door and can't be enlarged. So we're going to turn that into a studio space. I do photography and videography.
So the garage door is facing to the west.
It's right. It's actually facing
the old garage.
the existing. Yeah, it's right there,
And that's a single garage door.
and it's a single. And the new will be right there, facing to the alley. And I guess it shows it here. You see, there's a setback there. Here's the existing, and then it notches back and continues. We don't want to make this look like it's a farm building or a giant shed. Trying to be sensitive to the appearance and for the sake of the neighbors as well. Of course, ourselves.
Just taking a minute to read through your, what we just received.
So, quickly, while he's reading through that, where's the large tree located in the backyard?
It is right about there.
Okay.
It's a big one.
And what utility easement do you know that runs back through the backyard? Is it sewer? Or, oh, Excel. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The sewer is here.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, sir.
Cool. Thank you.
Is anyone present who wishes to speak in favor?
Are we going to bring staff back up?
Yeah, that's always last.
Oh, okay.
Anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition? Okay, we have more questions for you. Go ahead, Tom.
So, if it's a detached garage, typically the setback in the back would be 5 feet.
In this zone district, yes.
Okay, which is not possible because he has an easement.
Right.
If, and this is a theoretical question, but if the existing garage became attached, and then could they move the proposed garage 3 feet away from the existing, and it would become a detached garage?
Let me just see if I understand what you're asking me. If the existing garage becomes attached to the house.
Correct, if they built a little room and attached it.
Okay.
And then they built a new garage. Uh-huh. But is there does it matter if it's a foot away? Does it matter if it's 6 inches away?
It does matter, and that's a building code issue, but I believe it might be 3 feet. Unless they have fire-rated walls, then they maybe can go to 1. But again, that's a building code, but there is a separation requirement.
But zoning-wise, there's no stipulation for that?
No, not as long as they meet the setbacks.
Which is what we're responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which if it's detached, goes to 5 feet. As soon as it becomes attached, you have a 20-foot setback.
Mm-hmm.
Was there room to have what they want and have it be
You would,
attached?
you could barely, but 3 feet, it was a theoretical question. To me, that doesn't really make sense to have a 3-foot gap between two buildings. So that's what.
We're into discussion a little bit, but theoretically, you could build right next to it and have it as a separate structure, building-wise.
Right.
It gets in their gray area, but it could be done with firewall.
Yeah, and I guess that to me comes back to almost so we're considering all this a garage, the existing. But to me, it doesn't seem like you can fit 2 cars in there.
In the existing garage? I don't believe you can.
I can tell you if I couldn't get in and out of there without probably hitting the other car. And then I would have to live in the garage, which we know is against code.
And I think it only has a single car garage door.
Yeah. So even if they used that other portion of what's an existing garage as a storage area or a storage shed, we still consider that a garage just because it's all one thing. I guess I'm confused on if 2 accessory structures can actually be attached together. Can you have a storage shed that shares a roof with a garage?
You can.
So then that existing garage, not all, I don't know how you would designate half of it to be a utility structure.
If you built a wall.
Because that's your point, then less of the square footage is garage.
Yeah, because, I'm just trying to get, because it's such a, at first blush when I read this, it wasn't this complicated, but then when you dig into it a little bit more, it's very complicated.
Actually, this couldn't be considered an accessory structure, a garage, because it's over the 200 square feet. It couldn't be considered a storage shed or an accessory structure because it's over the 150 requirement for the storage shed, and it's over the 200 square foot for the accessory structure.
But you can't have, so virtually if you build one structure, even if you cordon off 200 square feet to be a storage shed or another accessory, a studio, if it's still attached to that garage, it's still all garage?
What we've seen and what we've approved before is people having a detached garage and they want to put a 150 square foot storage unit or storage shed right next to it. So they'll actually build it onto the side of the shed.
Right.
There's a wall separating them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking.
Okay.
That if Essence, and again, I don't know what this garage looks like inside, but if you have a garage and you build a wall in the middle and you call half of it garage and half of it a storage area, if it's under 200 feet or 150 feet, would that still?
We wouldn't know.
Okay.
And I know you asked me earlier if it had the same roof.
Right.
Typically, if you build it as one large unit, then it's this garage.
Okay.
The addition, which could share the roof with construction, marriage,
Right.
then it could be the shed.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. And we do have proof of posting and publication, I'll share. And we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
If I can get to it, that case VAR 2016-001, 2880 South Corona Street be granted a variance to exceed the maximum permitted total square foot of 1,000 square feet for a garage by an additional 84 square feet.
Second. Second.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mr. Mott already did. Any discussion on this?
So, again, I think, although this is a little tricky, I think part of the issue is that 20-foot setback. Because the house was built in 1954 and it's set back so far, there's no room to put an attached garage back there unless you get a variance on the 20-foot. It's 84 square feet. I think it makes sense to grant this for the simple reason that it's an older home. Across the street, there was a scrape, and that house is about on the same size lot. It's a fairly big house. They have a 3-car garage.
Across Corona?
Across Corona. And it's not shown in the aerial because it's an old aerial. And it would be 2865. And I have a hard time, in my mind, not granting a variance to have what one house can have across the street from another house.
Yeah, I saw that there's other houses in the vicinity with similar property sizes that have 3-car garages too.
I guess to me, everything on here is unique, where the house is located, or how the existing garage is built with one garage instead of one garage door instead of 2, and then setbacks. Easements.
I don't even know how you'd get a second car in the garage.
I don't.
You wouldn't. The only way would be to put doors off the alley instead.
So that's my view on it.
So criteria 1 being?
I think it's, as Mr. Friesen said, I think it's extremely unique with the alley on the side, the way the house is set back. In essence, it hamstrings you a little bit.
And the easement.
Yep, and the easement, because now that pushes the garage up. Again, I think it's false to say that we're actually granting 1,084 square foot garage, because that's not what we're doing. Even though that's under code, that's kind of how it comes out. But I just can't picture it in my mind that way.
Right. It's not how it's going to be used.
Yeah, and I think it's consistent with the zone district regulations. I don't think it'll impair the use of the neighborhood, especially that neighborhood is changing so rapidly, and there's a lot of bigger homes going in there, zero lot line homes. So it's nice to see actually an older home sticking around. And I don't think it's self-imposed because they didn't build the interestingly designed, poorly designed garage.
All right, any other discussion? Let's vote.
I voted yes. I believe the site is very unique as far as placement of the house and the existing garage and the utility easements. I also think it's consistent with the intent of the zone district. There's not going to be any public safety issues there. It will not permanently impair the development of adjacent conforming uses, and it's not self-imposed. It's what's already there, and they're having to deal with it.
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
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 I voted yes for the reasons stated by Mr. Friesen.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, is there a motion to approve our minutes from May 11th?
So moved.
Second.
And let's see. Was everyone?
I wasn't here.
Okay, so Ms. Schmitz will abstain. Everyone else, if voting in favor of approving the minutes from the May 11th meeting, state aye. Aye. Opposed, state nay. Okay. The minutes are approved. Is there a motion to approve the findings of fact from case VAR 2016-008?
Make a motion to approve the findings of fact for case VAR 2016-008 for 4811 South Broadway.
Second.
Thank you. So Ms. Schmitz will abstain from that as well. Everyone else who's in favor of approving those findings of fact, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, state nay. Those are approved. Do you have anything for us, Ms. Kirk?
There will be a case next month, and it's a setback on an addition.
Okay. Do you have anything for us, Mr. Comer?
I do not.
I have a quick question, which I don't know if it's possible. So on the city, which I appreciate, the staff provides aerials, but sometimes those aerials are a little out of date. I don't know if it's possible to include a screenshot of a Google Maps for the area at times.
We can do that, but I can also ask my director.
Yeah, I mean, if Google Maps would work just as well. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just, on this one, the last case, I thought it was interesting because there was a big house next door I noticed when I looked at the house, but it wasn't on the aerial.
Yeah, because there's been so many scrapes and rebuilds around there.
So if there's any way that could, it would help us.
Board members, I know we've wondered about how to raise the profile of the retail 50.1% requirement, and wondered if there's some. I know Ms. Purdy and others of us wonder what the best way to raise that. Get the attention of City Council on addressing that is. Should we write a letter? Should we?
It is it's on Planning and Zoning Commission's radar. The problem is right now they have to get through the comp plan, and then after that they have to get through the sign code, which we have to change because of the Supreme Court decision. And after that, we are going to be taking it to Planning
So that all has,
I mean, what's the soonest?
Well, we're hoping that by the end of the year, the comp plan gets done. And they started working on the sign code prior to the comp plan. You go to planning and zoning, right?
Yes.
Okay, so they've started working on the comp.
Actually, they're done. Well, Brooke is done with his portion of it. Yes. So now all he's going to do is get it, I think, more in a position for planning and zoning to approve. Okay. And then from there, it would go to council. Because he went through all of the changes with them the last 2 meetings, and there wasn't a lot of discussion. So it sounded to me like Brooke was going to clean it up. You know, he highlighted all the sections that were going to be removed, put in some red lines or red, just some notes in red. He's going to take that out and then bring it back to show them the finished product. And I think from there it would go to council. I can't tell you, when, but it's. I don't see a big issue with it. It's merely a sign code. We're just changing it. I mean, we have to. And so I would hope that council could get through that relatively quickly. Maybe August, September, if not sooner. But we're already in mid-June, and July is going to be crazy, so I'm thinking August, September. But in fact, P&Z won't have to do anything more once they move it to council. So
maybe what I could do is ask for an update on P&Z's calendar and have that brought to you guys next month, when the 50% reduction will be taking place.
yeah, we'd like to know when that's happening.
I saw that on the upcoming stuff for them on planning and zoning also. I saw that just written down. That didn't have any dates or anything or time frame.
I mean, maybe one of us should go to that P&Z meeting. Yeah. And I would just throw in there, maybe it's not so much a commercial space thing as an MUB1 in places where it shouldn't be big. But I have a personal interest in that as well. Full disclosure. Okay.
Do you have a business?
My house is in the MUB1. Is it? It sure
yes,
is.
it is.
And you want to open a business? Is that what
No, I would no, but there's a lot of MUB1. Like my whole block has
Half block.
is maybe not so much an MUB1 kind of place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much more residential.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
than
And so all of us,
Davita.
like, if we wanted to do if we wanted to scrape and rebuild like a duplex, we would have a maximum 5-foot setback plus this commercial ground floor issue. Yeah, I'd rather not do that. But yeah, so I maybe there's a couple ways to attack this issue.
Okay, and I'll bring that up too.
The MUB2 has the same requirement. It just seems like it goes so far into the residential districts, and then it also has a couple weird flags like her block and this block.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just some weird.
Yeah.
Do you know of?
We think it's a good requirement along Hampton, where retail should happen. But these little fingers of zoning that just reaches out, it doesn't make sense. And so that's why
But even like the MUB2 adjacent to this, to the west, goes awfully far south into that. I mean, it probably starts making more sense. It gets closer to the police station and fire station over there. But
Do you know of any other cases that are in the pipeline for this?
for the reduction of commercial space, no.
Okay.
Nobody's come in. And if they do, we're just going to be like, nope, gotta go. No. I am.
At that point, I think you'll draw straws for the case.
That's exactly right.
I thought it was 3, maybe.
We had one last month.
Well, one place happened twice on, and then it only ended up going through on one. The Mason place.
Oh,
I think we had.
yeah, senior living. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they went through twice. That's right. They had 2 different plans.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So this is Mr. Mott's last night with us. We'll miss you.
They're kicking me off.
Somehow he ended up on two boards at the same time.
I'm
And-
not saying he's leaving the less exciting board, but he has a book that obviously we are not the exciting board.
So thank you for your service on our board, and we'll miss you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mott.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor, state aye. Aye. We're adjourned.